What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Hello, welcome everyone. Today's guest is an art and design enthusiast, lives out the meaning of hospitality. He's a lifelong friend of mine, former roommate, president at Agency 967, Misha Bedner. Welcome, Mish.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
I have so much love and affection and just appreciation for the industry that we're in and delivering hospitality to everyone that I just really want to start off with you. How do you define hospitality?
So I've worked in many aspects of this industry, from design, purchasing, art consulting, and now I'm doing what I'm doing with you on the sales side of things. And so I should say that hospitality directly correlates with one of those things, but I'm not.
Good.
I'm going to say that hospitality focuses on service.
And what do you mean by that, service?
So when you walk into a hotel, and I have my wife with me and 3 screaming kids. And typically what I do is I walk over to, and I know you do this too, I walk over to every piece of furniture and I flip it over and see who the manufacturer is. And then I have to touch the fabrics and feel it out and just see, what it's all about from the design aspect. But that's not the best part of a hotel experience. The best part is service. It's the people who greet you at the door. It's when you go to the front desk and they have a bright smile and they want to say they say welcome and all that. What they embody is what that hotel in which they're working in embodies as well. So service, and I'm embarrassed to admit that it's the word service. So I'm going to go back a little. I've worked with my dad for many years when I was at HBA.
Yeah.
And I saw him give a multitude of interviews, and he was always asked a similar question, like, what do you feel about hospitality, or what's the main component of hospitality that resonates the most with you? And he would always say, I'm like, Dad, the marketing side of me says, Dad, say design. And he would say service. And I'd be like, oh shit, why do you say that? And now, after being in this industry for, dear God, I think it's 25 years or so now.
Or really since you were born.
Pretty much. I have to say it's service. And there's 2 things that are problematic about that is that, having my background, I should say product, or, having comfortable furniture or beautiful fixtures. That's what makes a hotel. But sadly, I think I'm just turning into my father and I'm just saying what he says. It's tragic, totally tragic.
Yeah, I can't wait to have your dad on the podcast too. And so I hear you saying that you learned that idea of service from your dad, but when you think about when you're walking into that restaurant, hotel, resort, whatever, with your wife and the 3 screaming kids, when you pull apart that idea of service, what is that connection that they do to make you feel comfortable? Do you have any instances of how you feel comfortable and how you recognize when that delivery of hospitality?
Sure. So a perfect example, my lovely wife, Jamie, and I went on a staycation for our anniversary a few days back. And we live in Manhattan Beach. We went to Santa Monica, which is all of about 20 minutes away. And we stayed at a hotel in Santa Monica. And we walked in, and the people who opened the door were like, "Welcome," and big smiles on their faces. So that was that was the first touch, and the joy that was, and it could be faux joy, but at least they're expressing a nice emotion. That kind of sets the tone for when you're walking into a hotel. So we went past the front door, got to the front desk. Gentleman who's Justin, lovely Justin, who's behind the front desk.
Oh, you
He
even remember
goes,
his name?
"Yeah, I that's how good he was."
Oh,
And
wow.
he's like, he goes, "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Bedner." He goes, "Wait a second, today is your 18th anniversary, isn't it?" And I was like, "Justin, that is lovely for you to know this, even though when you sign up for your when you make your room reservations, you say, hey, any notes on special occasions and things like that." So he goes, "I just want to congratulate you for tolerating this man." This is what he's saying to Jamie, "Tolerating this man for 18 years. Guy doesn't even know me, but tongue in cheek. Love that kind of that vibe." And he goes, I apologize. You're going to have to sit tight for about 15 minutes. Your room isn't ready because I'm going to upgrade you to a suite." And we're like, "Oh, Justin, really?" And he goes, "Yes." So he goes, "Go upstairs. The drink's on us. You have to go to the upstairs bar. I'll get you whatever you want to get, and then come back down here. We'll get your room ready. It'll be ready in 15 minutes." So we go up the elevator after 15 minutes, and we go up there, and there's a handwritten note by Justin that I know he just scribbled out while we were in our little respite for 15 minutes. I mean, it's things like that. It's service, and I remember stuff like that much more than, oh, there's Egyptian cotton sheets. That's all fine and good, but it's the experience. It's about the people you meet. It's about the conversations you have. It's not about a bedspread.
Right. Well, and it's so great and amazing that you're sharing that, because I also feel like, okay, the people totally make that, and the connection between the people. And then, if it's all packaged in a beautifully built environment, I feel like it resonates that much more with me. Um, I love how you recognize that it's those little personal touches that
Mhm.
are really, really make the difference. So, like, when you think about, okay, that's your experience walking in there, but when people come to your home or come into your office, like, what are the ways that you approach each of those connections to make them feel comfortable?
Typically, I ply them with alcohol.
Alcohol. Okay. And then what if they're spending the night?
Uh, Less alcohol.
Okay, good.
But it's depending upon if someone's coming to my home, and usually I try to single out what is important to them to make them comfortable.
Mhm.
And that's something that you do with friends at your home, or customers who come to your office, or people who work at a hotel. They do for their patrons.
Mm.
It's just all about singling out what makes them comfortable, and how you give that to them.
And then where do you think you learned that?
Uh, I don't. You just have to surround yourself with good people, like-minded people, and they have to have the same value structure as you, um, and you learn it from them. And I honestly think we're blessed to be in this industry, because there's so many people
Mhm.
who do that, or feel that way, or um, provide that kind of service to people.
So I know you brought up that guy Justin, the
Mhm.
who sounds amazing, and someday I hope I'll be able to stay there. But if you could think of the ways that you deliver hospitality and define it within your home or business, and you, rather than speaking generally, like, are there specific individuals that you can I don't know, tie your experience back to so that like we can get a feeling of it?
Well, I mean, I'd have to bring Pops back into the fold. He's been at the forefront of this industry since the 1960s. He and Howard Hirsch, um, you know, they, I mean, if you want to talk about defining the hospitality design industry as we know it now,
Mhm.
I mean, my dad is, the ideal person to talk to. So I learned a lot from him. And that's, I was kicking and screaming. I didn't want to be involved in hotel design or everything that was, um, you know, part and parcel with that. I wanted to do screenwriting, and I was a history and art history major, and my thesis at UCLA was the Mboudier Society and how they correlate with the mafia. I mean, all these things don't really correspond with a job. So I kind of got pulled into the fold by my dad, and he taught me a whole bunch of stuff. He told me a lot of things that I shouldn't do. I mean, when we worked together, it was just for a handful of years, but we never saw eye to eye in 90% of the things that we were setting out to do.
Mhm.
He's more of a, let's just do it, bluff and bluster, and let's be aggressive about it. And I'm more calculated, and oh, let's look at the contract and see, so couldn't have been more different in those type of terms. But
Well, actually, you said something that jumped out at me that I want to dig into there. It's like where he told you what not to do. Specifically, what would he tell you not to do? What do you remember about that?
well, more so, if a customer, this is stuff that's not even the design end of things. This is more the marketing and BD stuff. He
Mhm.
goes, if a client invites you to do karaoke, God damn it, you go out and do karaoke, you know? Or if they want to go out on the town and do shots of sujo, you got to do it, because that's part of it. That makes them comfortable.
Right.
That will put you in their good graces, and then the design part's going to be easy.
Yeah, so much of it is, again, I think in that connection, it's also creating a shared experience, right? Because,
Sure.
everything that we do every day, from my experience, is like, it's so tactile that you're doing this and this, but when you can really create a shared experience, um, that becomes super memorable. I mean, that's amazing. So yeah, never turn down the shot of sujo. uh, or soju. So
Soju, that's it.
soju.
It's
Sorry.
been too long.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, and it's been way too long for karaoke too. I can't wait for that. So speaking about Justin and the best experience, like if you were to go into, like, do you remember your worst experience of hospitality?
Yes. So again, I have three kids, and Jamie and I brought all of the kids down to, I think it was Oceanside, for a soccer tournament. And we rolled up late to this hotel. It was about 9:30 at night. And I'm not going to say what hotel it was, but uh, we walked in, and we made reservations, and they're like, oh, you know what? We walk up to the front desk. Oh, I don't think we can honor your reservation. You're about 4 hours later than you were expected to be here. And we're like, well, where do you want us to go? It's in the middle of the night. We have no other options. And they're like, yeah, well, God, there's this one room. It's not a suite. It has one bed, and we can maybe hole you up in that space. Just not everything is vivid in my mind, but it was a textbook. It's when you walk up to the front desk. It's the lady behind the desk. Everything was a textbook of what not to do and how to just thoroughly piss off your customer. from, like there was no greeting, there was no, no respect for the fact that I was holding on to two kids and screaming one behind me, and Jamie was upset, and they weren't providing the service or anything that I needed. So that was a miserable experience. And we got into the room, and Jamie's like, "What? There's like bloodstains on the walls, and there's like empty bottles behind the bed." And I mean, we were hoping for some type of, you know, design save that would happen once we rolled up into the room, but no.
Oh my gosh, I love that idea of the design tape. And then like, so oftentimes I find that from those really negative experiences, it teaches me so much. So like, if you learned something from that, what did you learn from that experience?
Uh, it showed the difference between how to make, if even if it's a good situation you're in or a bad situation, it's the way that people approach it, um, is how you could save that situation. It's something that you and I talk about all the time. In that, sometimes shit hits the fan, and it's something that's typically out of our control, or it's something that you or I didn't initiate, but it's how you approach it. If you calm the customer and you find a solution, and everyone is on the same page as to how to address the fix, you're fine. But if there's a problem and you go, "Oh, it's not my fault. I shouldn't be involved in this. Figure it out yourself," and you don't take ownership of it, that's a different approach that hopefully you and I don't subscribe to.
Yeah, I feel like that's, oftentimes from my experiences when I'm in a situation like you just described, it's often when the person who's delivering the service or delivering or trying to deliver the hospitality is relying on a policy, right?
Right.
It's like, how do I follow this playbook? And it becomes very automatic, but you're not really, you're missing the forest for the trees, if you will. Like they're not seeing you. And then if you think about when you're away from home, because obviously, we travel a lot. And when we're all at home, we all feel really comfortable at home. But how do you make yourself feel comfortable when you're not at home?
Meaning when I'm in a different city or
Yeah, when you're anywhere outside of home, usually probably spending an evening somewhere, like how do you make yourself comfortable? What are the things that you do to deliver hospitality to yourself?
oh, I Dan, I don't ever think about myself. I have to think about everyone else all the time. Um, it's always good to get acclimated to the place in which you're going, which is sometimes problematic. I mean, so when I was doing business development for HBA, and I was on planes, every 3 or 4 weeks, uh, and sometimes I jump on a plane to go to, say, Dalian, China. It'd be, 16, 17, 18-hour flight on economy, and I show up there, have a meeting for 4 hours, and then jump back on a plane and head back.
Mhm.
And that it's terrible because you're you're traveling more than you're actually meeting with the people you need to meet with, and you're also not getting any downtime in the place in which you're visiting. So what I always try to do is something culturally specific to the place in which I'm going to. So if I'm going to go to, use Dalian again. So, go hit up a museum or something if I have an hour, or go to some street cuisine kind of place and do that, or just doing something that's intrinsically that spot that you can't do anywhere else. Um, and it's
If you were
so
to
hard to
think
do that.
about, yeah, if you were to think about like an experience like that that might stand out to you that you remember the most.
Uh, I remember going on a business trip to India, and I had 2 hours to kill, and I went to uh, the National Museum there, the gallery there, and oddly, I think I was the only person in. This is a massive museum, encased in some old Victorian style building. And I think I was the only person there, and which is fantastic. I love to appreciate art, um, and just kind of, stare at paintings or take in pieces of art at my leisure. And it was great. It was something I wouldn't be able to see anywhere else. And it was a nice calming moment of an hour or hour and a half before I had to meet with a client, and then that was all chaos. So you
Mm.
need calming moments to mix in with the craziness of what we do once in a while.
Yeah. And okay. So a couple things are resonating there. Like one, it's almost like you created this calm respite, like an eye of a storm, if you will. That was not intentional, but again, you got out of you could have been waiting anywhere for that meeting to happen for 2 hours. You got yourself out of that potentially comfortable place to have a new experience. And then you were inspired and calmed and connected. So, and it's also like I'm hearing this just from knowing you, and I guess it's an unfair interview because I know you so well, but like um, this whole idea of how we find ourselves doing what we're doing and surrounded by these people who are just so incredibly talented, creating these really beautiful spaces. And I know, with your dad designing hotels and, you know, but there's this deep appreciation for things of beauty and art and aesthetic. Like, tell me more about that. Like, where do you, if you were to kind of trace that back into your like DNA or upbringing or from whoever, like, where does that come from? And how did it become so and I mean, it's everything from that I see, from furniture to museums to um, artwork to music to everything to comic books. Even it's always like you're super visual, and like, where does that come from?
I think it stems back to family. So my grandmother, Yarmila Majanova, she's a famous Czech artist, and I grew up watching her paint and do what she did. And her gift is something that I have tons of her paintings around my home, as do all of our relatives. So I think from seeing her artwork from a young age, uh, that really inspired me. And then obviously comics.
Well, then wait,
Uh,
well, going back to your, like, if you think about just kind of bringing it back to like making comfortable, creating that space, like when you were watching your grandmother create art at a young age, like what did it feel like in that studio or in that moment? Like how did you feel, and like what did you pay attention to? Tell
well,
me,
it's
like paint a picture of that.
sure. So she would have her studio, and she would have, you know, Vivaldi Four Seasons piping in the background. Uh, the blinds would be rolled up. She didn't want to have too much light, and just the gentle art of mixing paint and applying it to canvas. That in itself, like, I don't know, some people watch like Bob Ross videos, and they it's a calming 32 minutes of just like, because it's
Yeah.
a it's a it's a soothing and calming ritual.
Mm.
And and if you can do that and produce something beautiful, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
So my grandmother would do stuff like that, and I just remember sitting there watching, going, I wish I could do something like that. So I would draw and paint. I actually, I went to I was getting my master's. This is when I was roommates with you up in San Francisco,
Mm.
um, in some type of art form, as computer animation. But art and design and beautiful things have been uh, part of my life, and I guess everybody's life, forever. So I love to see beautiful things. I love to see beautiful things created. I love the process. I love the people who create beautiful things. Um, and I'm blessed to be part of what we do.
Yeah. It's amazing when you like the whole idea of looking at someone when they're creating a work of art, or for me, even sometimes just I, I have friends who are just really awesome at building financial models, and it sounds really weird, but just watching them like be wizards on Excel and just the gentle tapping of the keys and their focus. It really is like watching a Bob Ross painting being made.
Yeah.
There's something so relaxing, and there's this whole trend right now of like, or not right now, it's been for a while, just people opening gifts or opening boxes of things, and there's something so peaceful
What
about
is
it.
ASMR? Isn't there a term for it? I think
Yeah,
it's
I think it's that ASMR stuff. It gets into your somewhere in your brain, and I don't know, it's like goosebump delivering. I'm just wondering, like, in the whole idea, like bringing it back to just creating these shared experiences, like, could you think of that genius that your grandmother had that you were captivated by, and like bring it back to the guy who you checked into that hotel with? Like, is there some kind of a thread that ties it all together?
well, I think the process, let's take a specific example. The process of making of a hotel coming into being is so many people working, designing, and coming together and combining their forces to make something beautiful. I think there's something. I think it's one of the. I think it's spectacular, and there's people who are involved on the design side, and if you look over their shoulder and they're uh, space planning a guest room, or they're putting together, they're drawing out what a light fixture that's going to fit next to the bed. Um, all those million different little facets of how a hotel comes together. That's so beautiful to me. I mean, the sad thing is that that's like 2% of how a hotel comes together. All that fun design, all the sexy stuff, it's such a small little thing in the whole big picture. But, you know, eh, I think you could say that about any industry. If you watch an incredible movie, you're like, wow, that was such an incredible movie. That must have been so fun to produce. You know what? It probably wasn't, but it's all about the end product. So the end product for me on that particular instance, when we went to that hotel in Santa Monica, is that there was a beautiful shell of a hotel, and it was filled with these beautiful people who made my one day, Jamie's and my anniversary, special. And it's the conjoining of all of those forces coming together that made this fantastic experience.
Yeah, it's really just amazing because like with this whole pandemic that we've all been through, and like I really miss being able to go into as many firms offices as we used to all go into, and seeing, all right, so I'm having a meeting, I'm talking about a project, and then but like in those times between, just seeing those super talented people like layer textures and textiles and wood finishes, and to create that beautiful space where all these really incredibly caring people exist, and just the sheer intensity of it's like the concentration that they have, and the thoughtfulness and the intentionality of layering it all together, and thinking about how at some point 2 years in the future, or whenever that might be, that you and your wife or someone else are in there having that experience, like how does that whole piece speak to them? And it's like you think about that from the projects that we're working on, okay, but then also like how we have our apartments and how we have our homes, and how do we welcome people? It's just so thoughtful. It's not just a, yeah, okay, we get a drink and have a dinner and have a meal, but it's also that warm sense of a hearth and home.
Agreed. Yeah. No, and again, I was using a hotel as a specific example, but I think just the way we live on a daily basis, it should be intentional in that way. You know, if we're gonna, if I'm gonna be making breakfast for my kids, it should be well laid out, and forks and knives should be there, and orange juice should be poured up to this level, and bacon should be crisp because Jimmy wants crispy bacon and Mila wants kind of not so crispy bacon, and this person wants this type of egg. So this again, I'm diverging, but I think we should live life the way that uh, intentionally and with beauty, the way that we design hotels.
Uh, yeah, and as we get older, I just feel like life gets so busy, time gets so fast, it starts moving by so quickly, and I find that in thinking about to slow things down, one of the
Yeah.
things that I've learned is just being the moments when I'm super intentional about things, and I really work at it a lot, and it's a real challenge for me, but I'm I'm really committed to just being way more mindful just in day-to-day practice. And whether it's setting up or cooking to get kids breakfast or having a well-run meeting or just expressing gratitude in many different ways. Like just that whole idea of like time. I mean, time doesn't really slow down, but just focusing really closely on that moment and that experience, which I think ties back to that guy Justin as well. Like he spelled it all out. He really took the time to connect with you on that level. And then like what are other ways? And that's really interesting. So like as far as making people feel comfortable through just being super mindful, like are there any other experiences you can think of in that realm?
You mean like being deliberate on
Yeah.
uh, just how you? Um, I mean, nothing's really coming to mind, to be honest. You mean in the whole design, in what we do on a
Design
daily
or just
basis,
life
or?
and design life in general. Just like I love the idea of being able to interplay a sense of mindfulness into delivering hospitality. And just it's all about like being super intentional, right?
Yeah. Well,
Just in the space, in the interaction, in the connection.
yeah. I mean, look, when I go call on designers or purchasing agents, I'm not calling on designers and purchasing agents. For the most part, I mean, you and I have been in this industry for so long. We're calling on our friends, and that's I'm blessed because I get to work with my best friend, um, and I get to work with tons of other great friends. And these are people that I would hang out with um, outside of work. And these are people that at some point in my life, I exclusively only hung out with, hospitality people or design people or purchasing people.
Yeah.
But so when I call on them, I am mindful that each of those people, uh, they they different things resonate with them. So if I'm calling on a certain person and I know at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday they get kind of antsy at work and they need a pick me up, I'll bring something from creation cold press juicery to get them going again.
Cayenne
Or if
pepper.
I know one of them just had a child, and I did this once. I brought a designer a powder blue blanket, um, then found out that her child was a girl. But sometimes you mess up, but it's the attempt um, to kind of pick out those little things that make your relationship specific with them,
Yeah.
and make it above and beyond this whole thing. Like, oh, hey, I'm calling you. Do you have any projects you're working on that I can bid on?
Yeah.
That's the kind of mundane part of what we do.
Yeah. I was thinking about, you know, I don't know what it was as you were just talking, but it made me think of maybe it was about the food and delivering food or something. But I go back to the first time that I met you. You were a waiter at the Firehouse in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
I think you were 18. I was starting up at SC. You were going to start in the spring or something at UCLA, and I've actually never. I've had a lot of different jobs. I've never waited tables, but like if you could think about, you know, from all the things that we're talking about right now, what did you learn from working at the Firehouse in Santa Monica?
Oh, so I I have to say, I was never more exhausted at the end of a day than working, an 8-hour shift at the firehouse. So I believe I was 17 at the time,
Oh, and
and I
by
was
the way, for those of you who don't know, the Firehouse it's not like where firemen work. It's a restaurant in Santa Monica on like Rose and Main or something like
yep,
that. Where is it? Rose and Main? And was it an old converted firehouse?
correct. It was an old converted firehouse. Yeah.
And
So
I'm sure Misha will tell, but like I just remember, I think Gold's Gym there was some big bodybuilding gym across the street. So like all these guys would come in there and eat a lot. So maybe your exhaustion was from carrying all that heavy, just mass calorie food that they were eating, or or connecting with them in some other way. But like, tell me about that exhaustion.
you're correct. It was in between Gold's Gym and Power Gym and all the other major gyms that are down there in Venice Beach. So you'd get all these professional bodybuilders who, they couldn't fit through the front door. They'd have to go in sideways because it was so bulging and they were fully pumped. So that's the only way they can get in. And so I think, half of them are probably souped up on some kind of drug, so they're very aggressive, and they're like, I need my bodybuilder breakfast right now. I said I only wanted you know uh pasta on the side, just that kind of environment. It's so that in itself would tire you out, and plus just racing back and forth from table to table would sap the strength. But I was always on cappuccino and coffee and latte duty. So I would be the one in between jumping back and forth. I would have to make these coffee drinks, which is ironic because I don't drink coffee. I'm just naturally wired like this. And But they would say, "Let Misha make it. He makes a great cafe au lait." And to this day, I've never had a cafe au lait, but I make a decent one.
And then, as far as like creating memorable experiences or connecting or that sense of mindfulness or just attention when you're working at each table, like what were some of the things that you would do, or where did you learn them from?
So you have regulars who come in. So if you see them and they're about to get seated, you already plug in their order. So by the time they get seated, the meal comes, 3 minutes after they sit their rump down, which, just little things like that. You just have to be aware. You have to be specific and mindful about individuals, what that particular individual needs. And if and people pick up on that. They know, go, "Oh, oh, thank you. You knew that I needed decaf today because it's a Tuesday, and I have that big workout session tomorrow," or
It's a leg
so
day, or is it a back day? One of them.
this is one of those days.
And then, like many people, they want to sit down and regroup, but like I'd want to sit there and chill out and then order. But people really like having their food waiting there right as they sit down.
Yeah, I mean, some of these people would come in every day for 2 meals or 3 meals a day, and
Wow. What kind of
because we
person was
had
that?
because we had a specific menu, typically for the bodybuilders, bodybuilder breakfast, bodybuilder lunch, bodybuilder dinner, and all those people would come in, and it would it would just be automatic, like, "Oh, Flex is in town right now, Tuesday, let's get him."
Flex Wheeler?
Yeah.
Why do
How do
I
you
even
know?
know that?
How do you know that?
I have no idea.
So
I feel
yeah,
like his leg was maybe I remember seeing him there once, or his leg, I think, was like as big as my waist or something crazy like that.
yeah. He was. They were. These were huge individuals, and I weigh about, well, at the time when I was 17 or 18 years old, I weighed about 155 pounds and 6'2", so I was a rail. And these guys would come in and they're like 6'3" and 290 pounds. So yeah,
So do you have any like super memorable, like, well, like what was the most insane experience serving those guys?
so am I allowed to call out like actors by name, or
I don't know.
famous actor comes in? He doesn't want to be recognized. He rides a motorcycle. He comes in with his helmet on and sits down at the counter and orders a Coca-Cola or something like that. And when I give him the Coca-Cola, he lifts his visor up and drinks it through the helmet, and then puts it down again and puts the visor down.
Oh
And
my
he's
God.
doing this so he doesn't get recognized, but just that action right there is going to make everyone look at him.
Sounds like
So
an astronaut.
yeah, well, he played an astronaut, I'm sure, at
Oh, good.
one point or
Yeah.
another. But yeah, different strokes for different folks.
And then did you have like going back to some of the bodybuilder guys, or if they got annoyed or kind of some roid rage or whatever, how would you diffuse a situation like, or was there a specific instance where like you didn't bring egg whites and you brought them the whole egg and too many
Yeah,
carbs and they
I
lost
mean,
their mind on you? And like, how do you walk that out?
and this kind of coincides with what we're doing now, and I guess with any business, is that if you did something wrong, it's so much easier to admit it, say you're sorry, and fix it, than to say, oh, well, you said this. They don't care. Your customer doesn't care what they said. They care about you fixing the problem. And, you and I, we always talk about, um, it's shit's going to happen. It's all about how you fix it. And that's kind of the same situation that was at the Firehouse with the bodybuilders, and it's the same situation with our customers and clients on the hotel side.
Mm. And then, okay, so that's super funny. I totally forgot about all those bodybuilders. They were so
I'll tell
nice.
you who that actor is after we click off. I can't
Okay. Yeah,
mention him by name.
I'll put it in the write up. So, uh, and then working it there, like, how did you learn to wait tables and deliver service that way? Was it just like, hey, here's a tray and a pad, go, or like, who were your kind of mentors and taught you what you did there?
So you get thrown into the fire and you kind of just learn by watching the other waiters. So it's a I had my cousins work there prior to me working there, and that was Boopsie and Bing Bing and Chi Chi, and I don't make these names up. And they all worked there, and I learned from watching them, and they were stuff happened, and they had a smiling face and said, "Sorry about that. We'll fix it," and they fixed it, and that carried over to me, and that's
Yeah, and
that's
they're
the way
they're
I
all
try to
much
address
more
things now.
beautiful. They're all much more beautiful than you. So I'm sure their
They are.
smile would go a lot longer than yours.
They are.
Um, I miss all that. So, um, okay, so it's kind of switching gears. So, like, you learn where we are now. Like, now looking kind of forward from here we are in June, coming out of this pandemic, and kind of looking forward. Like, what's keeping you up at night right now?
uh, so what's happening now is that people want stuff, and that's a dramatic change from just 6 months to a year ago. um, and that makes me feel better. I think things are getting back on track quicker than I
And
expected.
and why do people want stuff? Because other people
I
at the
think
same
they're
time
I
don't know.
think they're ready. I think they're like,
Like
let's,
projects are happening.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's slowly trickling back, but people are like, let's try to get back to normal, and or get back to some semblance of normal. And but what's keeping me up at night is that, and this is across the board for most of our lines, or at least my lines here on the West Coast, is that we don't have the raw materials readily available to
Mm.
provide them the product that they want.
Yeah.
Um,
Supply chain issues.
so what used to be a 6-week lead time is now a 24-week lead time, and that's, as you can understand, would make various people um, not so happy. So I all I want to do is make our customers happy, and it's hard to do that when there's this bottleneck in the supply chain.
Yeah. So as you're experiencing that, and we're having these conversations every day, like, what's some advice that you could offer to anyone who wants to learn from you?
In the whole grand scheme of things, or just
Yeah, just
specific?
like in this thing that's keeping you up, like not being able to deliver. Like,
Mhm.
how do you handle that? How do you act like Justin
Yeah.
in those situations, and not like the lady at the blood-stained hotel room down in Oceanside?
Um,
where's
I
where's Misha in all that? Where are you on
yeah,
the spectrum?
no, all I could say is, let's keep calm and persevere, because I, things right now are so much better than they were 6 months ago, and
Mhm.
things 6 months ago were so much better than 6 months prior to that. So we're on this trajectory to go onward and upward, and I just want I want to implore people to be patient, and it will all happen, just not in the time frame in which we all want it to.
Right. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to bring up in that, um, through the pandemic, we know so many people have lost their jobs and looking for new things. And as things are picking up, like, what are you seeing now? Because I'm seeing like people need to hire, people need to do this. So, like, what are you seeing out there in California right now?
Well, there's a lot of people jumping from one firm to the next.
Hmm.
Um, I think people are always looking for the next best thing, or the grass is always greener, that kind of
Hmm.
vibe. But yeah, which, to be honest, I don't know if that's any different than any other time in our industry, because I think just designers, they they want to they want to work on fantastic projects, and they want to have the best product on their projects, and they want to work with the best people. And sometimes, you know uh, maybe it's no fault of their own, or maybe it is their fault, but they're stranded on working on projects where they're not getting the gratification that they need, so they think maybe going to another firm will fix that, and that's not always the case. So I think the advice that I would give would be, stick through with the company in which you're with, learn as much as you can, and then move on.
Hmm. Okay. And then, like, as you're seeing it out there, as things are kind of coming back to life, what's your biggest challenge or need right now?
Uh, I I want to duplicate myself and our staff, and just have our tendrils out in more spots than we do right now.
Hmm.
We can only be in so many spots at one time. So I just want to have everyone uh, be serviced to the degree in which they need to be. It's
Yeah.
hard to do that.
It's hard to do that now because still, even like I wouldn't want me in your office right now until we know what's going on, because
Sure.
everyone is like, still shell shocked from, at least in California and the New York area. Other places it doesn't matter. It's just like, yeah, come on in, it's fine, let's party. um, which is fine. I just want to make sure everyone feels comfortable. So then, thinking about, okay, so that's like where we are now, looking into the future, like, what's exciting you most about the future?
I think that we're going to have a raucous next year, in a good way, next year and the following year. I think there's going to be so much pent up desire and demand for getting everything back to normal, that this cold spell that we've had is going to break, and it's going to be a great roller coaster ride. And I think that's just going to be good for everyone. It's going to be good for people who do what you and I do, for designers, purchasing agents, owners, operators, and everyone in between.
Mhm.
So I'm very optimistic about the future for our industry.
Okay. So, thinking about, I always say, like, what I do is inconsequential, but why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys.
Sure.
So you as a 46-year-old Misha,
Yeah.
that sounds so weird.
Oof.
If you could teleport yourself back into that, into the firehouse, and as your 46-year-old self, and you see your 19 or 18 or 17-year-old self, like, what do you tell yourself back then? What piece of advice could you give yourself?
Uh, I would say, and I'm sure this is a common thing that people say is, I would say take more risks.
Take more
Uh,
risks.
yeah, because say it doesn't come to fruition, who cares? Move on to the next thing. You know,
Yeah.
and I've traditionally been very risk adverse, and I let people, guide me and direct me to what I need to do and where I need to be. Specifically my wife. But I wish that and I mean, I've done some great things, and I have the best friends, and I have the greatest family, and I've traveled all over the world. You know, I can't say that I've had any uh, horrific snafus in my life,
Mhm.
but adding that element or that ingredient of more risk and getting out of my comfort zone, I wish I did that more often, uh, and yes, more often.
Cool. Yeah, risk is always, it's a tough thing, right? Growth happens when we're all uncomfortable. And
Exactly.
I feel like I've had a hand in elbowing you out of a comfort zone a couple times.
Yes, agreed.
Uh, oh, that's fun. We should do a whole show on that.
Nope.
So, we're kind of wrapping up here now. I guess one last question: when you're away and you're away from home and you're all these other places, like, what kind of food do you crave the most when you're?
So if I could have 3 meals a day, it would be Mexican, and which is crazy because, as we all know, the bulk of Mexican food, uh, each dish has the same exact ingredients, just in different amounts for each dish.
Mhm.
So I, I I do love, if I was stranded on an island and I had one thing to eat, it would be a burrito.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you do a breakfast burrito, a lunch burrito, and a dinner burrito.
Yeah. Well, I'd probably do breakfast burrito, bodybuilder lunch, and then
Oh, you gotta bring the bodybuilder lunch back into that, right? I love that. Okay, so where can people find you?
so they can find us at we're agency 967. So they can go to 967.com, and that's spelled out NINSIXSEVEN.com.
Mhm.
And if you want to get me specifically, it's Misha at 967.com, spelled out.
So, hey, thank you very much. Um, you said where people can reach you to learn more. That's pretty much it, everyone. If you learned something today or just laugh, tell someone about the podcast. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next time.